Hello Year 6, today we're going to begin creating our own adventure game on Scratch. So if I click the green flag, I am the blue square. I can move around the screen, I can collect coins, I can also read messages, and there's an enemy that I need to avoid. I can then go through doors to go to another room, and then read the messages there for it to tell me what to do, so avoid the patrolling enemies. So we're going to begin with the first part today, which is coding the movement. On Microsoft Teams, I'm going to share a link with you, and when you click on that link, you're going to see this screen here. So at the top, you can click Remix, and then it's going to open the project page. There's not going to be any code, but it's going to have all the resources that you need to begin coding your game. The first part of our code is to make the player sprite move, so we want it to forever check if the up arrow is being pressed. So we need the event when flag clicked, and then control forever. I need to go to control to see if the arrow key is being pressed. So if and go to sensing, the key is pressed, so the up arrow, I want it to point in direction 0, and I want it to move 4 steps. So if I press play, it's now going to move up. I then need to add code to make it move left, so it needs to be minus 90 degrees, because if we look at the direction, 0 is pointing up, then we have 90, which is moving to the right, we have 180, which moves down, and then we have minus 90, which moves left. So we need another if-then block, and we'll drag it underneath, but still inside the forever block. And we're going to check if the left arrow key is being pressed. So I need to go to sensing and choose key pressed again, and now click left, go to motion. We want it to point in direction minus 90, so I can just move it in this way using the radius, or I can type it and then move 4 steps and press the green flag. So now my character can move to the left. I then need to do the same for the down arrow and the right arrow. If I right click this part of the code, I can duplicate it and drag it underneath. I can then change this to the right arrow and this to 90 degrees. And then I can duplicate this again and drag it underneath, and then choose the down arrow, and remember to go down we need it to be 180, so if we press the green flag it can now move to the right, up, down and left, and because of the way we've coded it, it can now move smoothly around the screen. The next part of our code is to detect if our player sprite is touching the light grey bar. So this is meant to be a wall, and we don't want our character to be able to move over it. So if it touches it, we want it to move back. So if we go to control and if and drag that underneath, we need a sensing block, so if it's touching colour. Now remember, you can click on the colour and then the colour picker tool and select that line there. We would then want it to move backwards, so minus 4 steps, so it could never walk over it. So if I press the green flag, it can't pass over the light grey wall. We are now going to code the rooms in our game. So if we click the backdrop on the side here and go to the backdrops tab, you can see that there's 3 rooms, so room 1, room 2 and room 3, and there's doors to move between the rooms. To keep track of this, we need a variable, so click on the backdrop and go back to the code. So we're going to click on variables and make a variable. We're going to call this room and click OK. And we want each room to have a different number. So to keep track of this, we need this piece of code here. So if touching colour orange, so that's our first door, we want to change the backdrop to the next one, which is room 2, and then we want to tell the game that the room variable is now 1 because we're in room 1. So let's initially set the room number to 1, and then we are going to click our player icon, and we need another if touching colour block. Now if the code is getting too long, we can just use another when flag clicks block and another forever block, or you can just put it underneath here. It's up to you, but I think I'm going to separate my code a little bit. So if then, so sensing if the player is touching the orange colour, then I want to change the backdrop. So I'll go to looks and switch backdrop to room 2, which is the next room. I then want to tell the game that they are in the next room, so I'm going to set room to number 2. So if I press the green flag, I am currently in room 1, which you can see at the top. If I go to the next room, I am now in room 2. But if I press the green flag again, it doesn't take me back to the beginning of the game, so I need to make sure when I start the game that it's going to be set as room 1. So if I go to backdrops, my room is set to 1, and I'm going to go to looks and switch backdrop to room 1. So if I press the green flag, it now changed to room 1, and if I go to room 2 and I press it again, it's now going to take me back to the first room. There's also another problem, which is our sprite doesn't start at the beginning of the room. It just stays where it was. So it's going through the door, but it's at the end of the room. We need to make sure when we start the game that our character starts at the beginning. I'm going to go to motion and then move my sprite into the position that I want, so at the beginning, and then I can drag that at the top there. So if I press the green flag and I go to the next room, it didn't change. So let's have a look. We had the code here, but we were missing it in the next room. So if I go back here and drag the go to, once it's changed rooms, and click the green flag, we'll see if that's worked. And it brings us to the beginning of the room. It's now time to add our signs to the game. So for the first room, it's placed somewhere around here, but the problem is if I go to the next room, the sign is still in the same place. So to address that problem, we only want this sign to show when we're in room 1. So if I click on this here, so we need a when flag clicked block, and we want to be checking forever what room we're in. So drag the forever block and then an if else block. We then need to go to operators to see if the room number is equal to 1, which will mean that we're in room 1. So equals, and then go to variable. So if room equals 1, I want to go to looks and show. Otherwise, if it's in another room, I want it to hide. So if I press green, the sign is currently visible. If I go to the next room, the sign is no longer there. If I want to add a sign in room 2, all I can do is right click on this and duplicate it, and then I can change this number 1 to number 2. So if I press the green flag, I have the first sign. Then if I go to the next room, I have the second sign, and I can move that into position. I then want the sign to display a message when the player touches it, so I'm going to click the first sign, and within the forever block, I want to check if the player is touching the sign. So if then and else, we're going to go to sensing, so if touching, drag that there, that's the first one, and change this to player, which is this sprite here. We go to looks and we want it to say the message. So this will be displayed as long as the character is touching the sign, otherwise we don't want it to say anything. So if I press green, if I'm touching it, it displays the message, but as soon as I move away, the message disappears. To add a message for the second sign, I can click on it here and then go to control and if then else. So if it's touching the player, I want it to say something, otherwise I don't want it to say anything. You can say avoid the enemies. Now before we move on, can you add code so that the treasure chest is in room 3 and it displays a message at the end? We'll look at the answer to that problem next lesson, but for now I hope you enjoyed that. Remember to save your work, so give it a name and then click File and Save Now. Good luck!